One machine costs $380 million. One company on Earth builds it. And without that company, there is no advanced AI chip, no new iPhone, no next-generation fighter jet. Its name is ASML. Almost nobody outside the industry knows it. Inside its machines, lasers strike microscopic droplets of molten tin to generate a sliver of light just 13.5 nanometers wide. Extreme ultraviolet light, the only way left to print the smallest, fastest chips on the planet. For a decade, governments have talked about supply chain resilience. Billions poured into new factories in Arizona, Japan, Germany, all built to escape dependence on any one company or country. But every one of those factories, wherever it stands, still needs a machine that comes from exactly one place. There is no second supplier. There never has been. To understand how one company came to hold that kind of leverage, you have to go back to a leaky shed outside Eindhoven in 1984. In 1984, a small stepper business inside the electronics giant Philips was quietly losing money. Philips could keep bankrolling it or cut it loose. Instead, encouraged by the Dutch Ministry of Economic Affairs, Philips folded it into a 50-50 joint venture with a fast-growing local supplier, ASM International. Each side put in about $2 million. ASM International's founder, Arthur Del Prado, brought entrepreneurial hunger. Philips brought 17 existing wafer steppers and a modest factory as its share of the deal. They called the new company ASM Lithography, ASML for short. It was a bet nobody expected to matter 20 years later. It began inside a leaky shed on Philips's striped T site in Eindhoven. Of the 50 engineers offered jobs at the new venture, 47 said yes, walking away from lifetime job security at Philips for a startup that made one product, the PAS 2000 wafer stepper, a machine that helps print circuits onto silicon. A year later, with about 100 employees, ASML moved down the road to Veldhoven, still its headquarters today. It was not glamorous, and it was not obviously the future. Through a mid-1980s downturn, ASM International sold its half of the company back to Philips in 1988. Philips itself began stepping back a few years later, its ownership unwinding gradually into the company's public listing. In February 1995, ASML went public, raising about $170 million, a modest number for a modest company, making machines nobody outside the chip industry had heard of, and nobody yet imagined would one day decide who gets to build the world's most advanced technology. Nobody at Philips and nobody in The Hague set out to build a monopoly. They set out to stop bleeding money on a stepper unit nobody wanted to keep. That ordinary, reasonable decision is where this story actually begins. And for years afterward, it still looked like the smaller company fighting for scraps against much bigger Japanese rivals. But being public didn't mean being safe. Through the 1990s and 2000s, ASML fought for market share against two much larger Japanese rivals, Nikon and Canon, who had built and sold lithography machines for far longer. ASML was smaller, newer, and hungrier, and it made a bet that could have killed it. The bet was extreme ultraviolet lithography, EUV. The idea? Generate light with a wavelength of just 13.5 nanometers, far shorter than anything used in production before, to print features too small for any existing machine. On paper, it solved the industry's biggest problem. In practice, nobody had ever made it work outside a laboratory. It took decades. Optics that had to be polished to atomic scale precision. A light source that didn't yet exist commercially, built by firing lasers at droplets of molten tin. Budgets ballooned, timelines slipped for years. No rival, not Nikon, not Canon, not anyone in the US or Japan, chose to make the same bet at the same scale. ASML would be the only company in the world betting its future on a technology many still doubted would ever leave the laboratory. 2 decades of that kind of isolation is a long time to bet correctly on unproven physics. By 2010, ASML was spending under $500 million a year on research, nowhere near enough to finish a technology this hard, on a timeline the industry could actually wait for. The physics might have worked eventually. The money might not have lasted long enough to find out. ASML did not have deep pockets to burn indefinitely, and its rivals were not going to fund a competitor's breakthrough out of kindness. Something had to give, So ASML did something the industry had never really done before. It asked its own customers to pay for the technology it couldn't finish alone. In July 2012, ASML launched the Customer Co-Investment Program. Intel went first, committing more than $4 billion, part R&D funding, part a stake of up to 15% of ASML itself. Weeks later, TSMC joined for a 5% stake. By the end of August, Samsung completed the round with 3%, 503 million euros in equity, plus 276 million euros in research funding over 5 years. Added up, Intel, TSMC, and Samsung. 3 companies that spend billions every year trying to outbuild each other. Together, bought 23% of ASML for 3.85 billion euros, and jointly funded 1.38 billion euros of R&D. Formal approval came at an extraordinary shareholders meeting on the 7th of September that year. The new shares were non-voting, except in extraordinary circumstances. And ASML committed to hand every euro of that cash straight back to its existing shareholders through a synthetic buyback. Its 3 biggest customers were bankrolling the company's future without being handed a vote in how it was run. On paper, it was a rescue package. Read the fine print, and it was something else. 3 rivals had just guaranteed that the one company standing between all of them and the next generation of chips would survive, no matter what. Nobody forced them into it. There was no antitrust concern, no regulator raising a hand, because on paper, ASML wasn't a monopoly yet. It was a struggling equipment maker that might not finish its most important project. The 3 companies that needed EUV most were also the only ones with the money to keep it alive, so they paid for it themselves, and in doing so, wrote themselves out of any future alternative. The technology their money bought would not just save ASML, it would remake it. The bet paid off. Cymer, the company that built EUV's light source, was folded into ASML in 2013 for about 2 billion euros, giving ASML control of the laser and tin droplet system at the heart of the machine. 3 years later, ASML bought a quarter stake in Zeiss's optics division for close to 1 billion euros, securing the mirrors that focus that light onto silicon. Light source, owned. Optics, locked in. Assembly, ASML's alone. There was no piece of the supply chain left for a competitor to build around. Even ASML's own machines got more expensive as they got better. An early low-NA EUV system ran about $183 million. By 2025, the newest high-NA version cost roughly double that, at $380 million. Today, ASML holds close to 90% of the lithography market overall, and effectively all of it in EUV. R&D spending, starved at under $500 million in 2010, doubled to $1 billion a year by 2015. And it worked. EUV machines started shipping to the world's most advanced fabs, TSMC, Samsung, eventually Intel, because below roughly 7 nanometers, there was no other way to print a chip. By January 2026, ASML's market value crossed $500 billion, riding the same AI boom its machines make possible. Within months, it climbed past $760 billion. Heading into 2026, ASML guided to 34 to 40 billion euros in revenue, alongside a 12 billion euro share buyback, a company confident enough in its position to hand cash back to investors even as geopolitics closed in. Every AI server, every advanced phone chip on Earth now runs through machines only one company can build, a company 3 of its own customers had funded into existence. Picture the room. It's the summer of 2012, and executives from 3 of the most fiercely competitive companies on Earth are quietly signing agreements with the same small Dutch firm. Intel, run by CEO Paul Otellini. TSMC, still under the long shadow of its founder, Morris Chang. Samsung's chip division, chasing both of them. Companies that spend billions every year trying to beat each other to the next process node, sitting separately across the table from ASML, agreeing to do something none of them would ever do for one another. Fund a rival supplier through a project that might still fail, because that was the real risk. EUV had already eaten years and untold sums of research money, and there was no guarantee, None. That the physics would ever cooperate at commercial scale. Inside ASML, the pressure was existential. Without this round, the company faced the real possibility of scaling back the one bet that could define the next 20 years of computing or abandoning it altogether. Outside ASML, in Santa Clara and Hsinchu and Suwon, the calculation was just as stark. If EUV failed and no replacement arrived in time, an entire industry's roadmap, smaller chips, faster chips, the whole engine of Moore's Law, stalled with it. So they wrote the checks. Intel's alone topped $4 billion. Nobody was doing this out of loyalty or friendship. Every single company at that table would have preferred a second competing supplier. Real leverage, real choice. There wasn't one. There had never been one. And even then, ASML made sure of one thing. The shares changing hands were non-voting. Its rivals could fund it, could rescue it, but they would not get to steer it. They were paying for insurance, not influence. Inside the clean rooms, engineers who had spent years on a machine that still didn't reliably work watched their fate get decided by executives in boardrooms they were never in. This was not a partnership of equals, dressed up as one. It was the moment leverage quietly changed hands, and almost no one outside those rooms noticed. By the time the ink dried in August 2012, the industry had done the only rational thing available to it. It had bought its own chokepoint a full pardon and called it an investment. Within a year, the technology started to work. Within a decade, none of the three companies that funded it could walk away, because by then, EUV wasn't an option among several. It was the only door left standing. Back in the present, that dependence has turned into a government's-level standoff. Since 2019, ASML has never shipped a single EUV machine to China, a Dutch export ban under sustained US pressure that predates the wider chip war by years. Then, in March 2023, the Dutch government announced it would go further, restricting its most advanced deep ultraviolet machines too. Those rules took effect that September. By January 2024, some previously granted licenses were revoked outright. ASML's CEO at the time put the impact at 10 to 15% of its China business, gone almost overnight. And yet, through all of it, China kept buying everything still legally available. In 2024, China accounted for 10.2 billion euros of ASML's total 28.3 billion in sales, about 36%, spiking as high as 49% in a single quarter. By the third quarter of 2025, China's share of system sales hit 42%. ASML's current CEO, Christophe Fouquet, has now warned investors that China revenue will decline significantly starting in 2026. Washington keeps pushing for more. A bill in Congress, the Match Act, would force the Netherlands to ban even ASML's older machines from Chinese fabs and restrict servicing equipment already installed there. The Dutch government has formally objected, calling the reach of that law a threat to its own sovereignty over export decisions. China's foreign ministry, through spokesperson Mao Ning, has accused Washington of what she called an abuse of export controls, using various pretexts to win over and coerce other countries into imposing a technological blockade against China. Formally, controls on exports like these are supposed to run through a multilateral body called the Wassenaar Arrangement. In practice, the last decade shows something more direct: bilateral pressure on one small country over the export licenses of one company, two governments arguing over the shipping manifests of one company neither of them controls. Here is the acidic detail. 2025 was a record year for ASML, about 32.7 billion euros in revenue, a market value crossing $700 billion. And ASML still cut around 1,700 jobs, mostly in the Netherlands. Being the single most important company in the world's most important industry did not make it immune to the disruption that industry lives inside. It just meant the disruption showed up on a bigger balance sheet. It would be easy to call this a monopoly story or a villain story. One company that got too powerful, one government that let it happen. That's too easy. Every decision that built ASML's grip on the world's chips was locally reasonable. A loss-making division spun out to save it. A doomed technology bankrolled by the only companies that needed it to work. acquisitions that closed obvious gaps, export rules written to protect national security. None of it was a conspiracy. All of it added up to the same place. Even the rivals who saved it were never given a vote in how it would be run. And that did not stop them from needing it more with every passing year. Supply chain resilience is a phrase policymakers use to describe billions spent building new factories in new countries. But resilience was never really available to them. Every one of those new factories, wherever it stands, still waits on a machine from the same address in the Netherlands. The chip war has two visible sides, Washington and Beijing, and one invisible one that neither side actually controls. In 1984, 47 engineers walked out of a stable job at Philips and into a leaky shed to build a stepper nobody had heard of. Today, that shed's descendant is worth more than most countries' economies, and two governments negotiate around its shipping schedule. Nobody planned this outcome. Everybody built it anyway.